Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
There is a persistent whisper carried by desert winds and mountain echoes, a sacred murmur from the Horn of Africa that urges humanity to look again, to see past the ruins of empires and the silence of lost languages. It calls us to the highlands of Ethiopia, where ancient manuscripts, guarded monasteries, and oral traditions defy the modern world's assumptions about myth, history, and divinity. Could it be that the fabled tree of life, the one mentioned in the Book of Genesis and long dismissed as a lost symbol, is not only real, but still standing? To the Western world, the tree of life is often confined to metaphor, myth, or poetic allegory. But Ethiopian tradition, intertwined with Judaic-Christian mysticism and an unbroken spiritual lineage, suggests something much more radical, that the tree of life may not be a memory, but a presence. Ethiopia is no stranger to ancient enigmas. From its claims of housing the Ark of the Covenant in the city of Aksum to the assertion that it kept an original version of the Book of Enoch long before it was rediscovered in the West, the country has long existed at the edge of biblical memory and historical revision. Ethiopian Christianity, known as the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, is one of the oldest forms of Christianity on earth, dating back to the 4th century CE, and, according to tradition, rooted even earlier through its ties to the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. These historical currents do not merely preserve religious identity, they carry forgotten tales, alternate cosmologies, and encoded references to sacred landscapes. Among the many mysteries hidden in the ecclesiastical vaults of Ethiopia is a recurrent reference to an ancient tree, known in various Guizi texts and oral accounts as Sabazath, meaning tree of life or tree of eternity. Unlike the distant Edenic imagery found in Western Bibles, Ethiopia's tree of life is located not just in spiritual texts, but also embedded within physical geography. Monks and priests from the monasteries of Lake Tana, Debre Damo, and Lalibela speak in veiled terms about a living tree whose roots reach back to the beginning of time and whose canopy still shelters a hidden truth. In some traditions, this tree is not merely a symbol of God's creation. It is the axis mundi, the spiritual and physical center of the world, a relic of the prelapsarian world still tethered to divine presence. The earliest clues to the tree of life in Ethiopian tradition appear in apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts, such as the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, and the Kebre Nagast. The Book of Enoch, which was preserved in Guizi by Ethiopian scribes long after it disappeared from the Hebrew canon, speaks of a tree of great fragrance that no mortal has the authority to touch, and that blesses those who dwell near it. In these ancient lines, we see clear parallels with the Genesis narrative, but with a geographical and cultural inflection that places the mystery east of Eden, somewhere in the land of Cush, biblically synonymous with Ethiopia. The Kebre Nagast, Ethiopia's national epic, adds a deeper dimension, suggesting that divine favor and wisdom were transmitted through sacred objects, locations, and bloodlines that are still operative in the Ethiopian landscape. Unlike the West's linear biblical interpretation, Ethiopia's religious worldview is cyclical, layered, and deeply environmental. The Garden of Eden, in this tradition, is not a one-time location lost to sin, but a divine condition still accessible through ritual purity, spiritual revelation, and sacred geography. Certain places in Ethiopia, such as Wallo, Simeon Mountains, and the remote region of Baal, are regarded as thin spaces where heaven and earth converge. Elders from the Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jewish, communities speak of secret groves where divine manifestations have appeared for generations, shielded from outsiders. In these living traditions, trees are not merely biological entities. They are portals, living archives, and vessels of sacred continuity. Modern science has yet to explore these traditions deeply, though botany and archaeology have uncovered tantalizing traces. Ethiopia is home to one of the most diverse ecological systems in Africa, and some of its endemic trees, particularly species like the sycamore fig, Ficus sycamoris, and the African olive, Olea europea subcuspidata, have long been associated with sacred rituals and monastic settlements. Certain trees said to be over 1,000 years old are still protected by churches and cloisters. They were forbidden to be cut, their shade reserved for prayer. In the church forests of northern Ethiopia, tiny oases of greenery preserved by Ethiopian clergy, science and faith converge to protect what the faithful believe are living witnesses of creation. One particular location that continues to inspire scholarly speculation is the region of Tigray, where legends persist of a sacred grove protected by the descendants of ancient priests. Oral tradition claims that within this grove stands a tree that has never been felled, never withered, and whose bark emits a fragrance when touched at dawn. This tree is guarded not by force, but by sacred vow. Only the most devout, initiated through fasting and years of service, are permitted to enter its enclosure. Though the West may dismiss such claims as mythologized folklore, the consistency and longevity of these traditions challenge easy dismissal. Furthermore, recent linguistic analysis of Guizi texts has revealed an unusually high recurrence of Edenic motifs in Ethiopian hymnody and liturgy, far more than in comparable Christian traditions. The tree, in Ethiopian religious poetry, is not only a symbol of life but also of divine wisdom, tiabeb, purity, and continuity. Some scholars believe that the Ethiopian tree of life tradition has more in common with the mystical tree of the Kabbalah or the world tree of ancient Mesopotamian cultures than with the static symbolism found in modern Christianity. The tree of life, if taken seriously within Ethiopian cosmology, offers not just a botanical mystery but a philosophical revolution. It repositions the human story not as a fall from Eden, but as a journey toward its rediscovery. It reframes Africa, not Europe or the Middle East, as the spiritual heartbeat of humanity. And most profoundly, it invites a reevaluation of the Western theological narrative that has, for centuries, looked outward for lost paradise, when perhaps the clue was nestled in Africa all along. In the 21st century, as climate change and ecological devastation threaten the very lungs of the planet, Ethiopia's reverence for trees, especially those considered sacred, is not merely cultural, but prophetic. The ancient belief that trees connect heaven and earth, body and soul, might not just be a mythic relic, but a vital truth. The tree of life, whether standing as a literal organism or as a metaphysical axis, still casts its shade over the sacred soil of Ethiopia, waiting patiently for the world to remember.